A number of Second Amendment advocacy groups are vying to replace the National Rifle Association as the most powerful gun rights group in America. The NRA has been mired in controversy after allegations surfaced of lavish overspending by executives and plots to overthrow its CEO, Wayne LaPierre. The accusations have caused a number of board members to resign in recent weeks. At least 2 separate investigations into the group's finances are now underway. Despite its internal struggles, the NRA still seems to have a strong grip on gun policy in Washington, an influence that could be tough for rival groups to match. Marianne Levine joins me now from Arlington, Virginia. She's a reporter for Politico covering the Senate. Marianne, thank you so much for joining us. As you've been reporting, many other gun groups have sensed a void left by the NRA. What's behind this perception?
So several gun groups have said that they are essentially trying to replace the NRA as the leading gun rights group in the country. And part of this is related to the NRA's recent controversies, as you mentioned, with Wayne LaPierre, the chief executive's lavish spending, as well as upper turmoil at their staffing levels. So a lot of gun groups are saying, hey, the NRA is in trouble. There's a void that we can potentially fill. And they're starting to think of different strategies for how to do that.
Yeah, and what messages are these other gun groups using to try to incentivize gun owners to leave the NRA and join them instead?
One message that some of the gun groups are saying, including the Gun Owners of America, is that the National Rifle Association is not as devoted to the Second Amendment as they are. And one of their criticisms is that the National Rifle Association came out in favor, or at least appeared open to this idea of red flag laws. Mm-hmm. These are laws under which a police officer or a family member can petition a court to confiscate a weapon from someone who's a threat to themselves or to other people. And the NRA demonstrated that they were open to that idea after the Parkland shooting, and many gun groups, including the Gun Owners of America and the National Association for Gun Rights, viewed that as an area of weakness, and they claim that they are getting more members because there are other gun owners who worry that the NRA may be too weak on these issues.
Well, how do the views of the other gun groups compare to the views of the National Rifle Association when it actually comes to the Second Amendment?
The views of these other groups, including Gun Owners of America and the National Association for Gun Rights, they're a bit more extreme. They are not even open to the idea of red flag laws, for example, which is one area where we're seeing Senate Republicans talk about as a possibility for legislation when Congress gets back from the August recess. So this is viewed as, and Democrats say that red flag laws are essentially not even really going to help solve the issue. And so the fact that the NRA is open to it, but these other gun owner groups are not, or gun rights groups are not, suggests that they're to the right of the NRA when it comes to a lot of Second Amendment issues.
It's interesting though, because the president seemed to be open in the wake of those mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton to perhaps strengthening background checks, but then spoke on the phone to the NRA's Wayne LaPierre and now seems to be backing away perhaps from that idea. I mean, does it stand to reason that the NRA still has considerable influence despite those internal struggles?
Well, the fact that Wayne LaPierre spoke to the president on the phone suggests that that's the case, that they do have some influence. And also, another area where they do have influence is on lobbying. And if you look at the lobbying numbers of the NRA compared to some of these other groups, the NRA does typically continue to outspend most of these Second Amendment or gun rights groups, if you will. And that suggests at least that it's going to be hard to unseat the NRA despite the desire of some of these groups to do so.
So the NRA has an extensive network. As I understand it, no one knows exactly how many members they have, but they say there are around 5 million. They collect hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and are able to, as we saw in that phone call from Wayne LaPierre to the president, have a direct connection to the White House. Can those smaller gun rights groups hope to gain influence in Washington that comes anywhere close to the kind of power that the NRA has?
It's going to be hard to do so, and I think it's early to predict that. But what we can say is that what these groups are saying, and it's hard to verify this information, but what they're at least claiming is that they've seen a rise in membership in recent years. And there have been years where some groups have outspent the NRA. The National Association for Gun Rights, for example, outspent the NRA on lobbying shortly after the Parkland shootings, shortly after the Sandy Hook shootings. And so there are times where we have seen some momentum behind some of these groups, but the NRA does remain the most powerful influence, at least at the moment, when it comes to advocating for gun rights.
Yeah.
But that could change given the turmoil they're facing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that landscape ultimately settles, if it does, considering the debate, at least on the Democratic side, over this issue of guns. All right, Marianne Levine. Marianne, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
In Thursday's edition